Okay, in this video, we're going to be talking about what is SIBO and SIFO. These are common problems that almost every patient that comes to see us is already struggling with, whether they know it or not. You've probably heard at least the term SIBO, but maybe not the term SIFO. So without much more delay, let's get into it. So what does SIBO and SIFO stand for? First of all, pretty easy. Small intestinal bacterial overgrowth or small intestinal fungal overgrowth. Now, frequently, these two go hand in hand. They correlate with each other because our microbiome inside of our bowels is not just a single organism entity. You don't just have a Klebsiella overgrowth or you don't just have a Candida overgrowth. It's polymicrobial. And these guys work together, or girls, whatever they are, they work together to form biofilms and difficult to eradicate colonies. So you can test for each one of these individually, but I don't want you to get too wrapped up into, oh, I only have SIBO or I only have SIFO, because chances are you've got a combination of them. And at different points in your treatment, you may need to focus on one or focus on the other, but I want you to think of these as two entities that exist together. That's why I prefer the term dysbiosis. Now, dysbiosis doesn't roll off the tongue nearly as well as SIBO and SIFO does, but dysbiosis is a better term because all it means is dys in the Latin words kind of means abnormal. And then biosis is just saying your microbiome. So basically, there's something abnormal going on with your microbiome, whether that's too much fungus, too much bacteria, or whether we don't really know, we need to treat it anyway, kind of idea. The other thing I want to make sure I point out here is that we're specifically referring to the small intestine right now. There's all kinds of pathologies that can happen from the stomach all the way down to the anus, and it's important that when we're talking about a certain organ that you know exactly which organ we're talking about. So to get in a little more detail, the stomach is the first thing that receives the food after you swallow. After the stomach is done digesting the food with stomach acid, it dumps the contents into the small intestines. And the small intestines is a long field that's wrapped in and out. That's where you absorb all of your nutrients, hopefully. But if there's overgrowth inside the small intestines, which are supposed to be rather sterile, you're not supposed to have a lot of organisms in the small intestines. The reason being is because that's your chance to absorb the nutrients before these organisms get it in the large bowels. You're supposed to get first dibs at your food, and whenever you don't want, the table scraps, so to speak, ends up in the large intestine, and that's where the majority of your bacteria and fungus should be so that they can get your table scraps. But when you're struggling with SIBO, SIFO, or as I like to say, dysbiosis, you've got too much growth inside of the small intestines and they're getting first dibs at your food. Because remember, the food is inside of the tube and the bacteria and fungus are inside of the tube. You're trying to extract what's inside of the tube, but the SIBO and SIFO is already inside of the tube, already inside of your food, okay? So make sure you know which place we're talking about. Now, the truth is that a lot of times we're treating for bacteria and fungus overgrowth, even though we can't really tell whether it's in your small intestine or in your large intestine. But chances are, if you're struggling with some sort of overgrowth, it's already in your intestines, and we've got to fix that too. Next up, what are the symptoms of SIBO and SIFO? One of the symptoms on here is none. Some people don't have any symptoms of SIBO and SIFO. They don't have any gas, they don't have any bloating. They consider themselves to have an iron stomach, but lo and behold, once we do their testing or we go down the treatment pathway, that gets uncovered. But a lot of people have symptoms of SIBO and SIFO and they come to see us. The most prominent one, and women struggle with this more than men, is the gas and bloating. Women always have gas and bloating with SIBO, SIFO, very common. Men are more likely to have the fat flatulence. So women are more likely to have the gas that stays in and bloats them. Men are more likely to have the gas that comes out and bothers others, right? Another common one is diarrhea, though you can also have constipation. Diarrhea is more common. And one of the reasons we believe diarrhea is more common is because when bacteria and fungus are digesting your food before you do, they make metabolites and things that your human intestinal system doesn't really like. So whenever your human intestinal system gets some metabolites or some sort of toxin or food poisoning, for instance, that it doesn't like, one of the simple solutions is for the intestines just to say, I don't know what this is, I don't like it, just dump it out. So that triggers too much peristalsis, too much speed, and then you end up having liquid stool, which is diarrhea in the toilet. So if you have too much overgrowth, diarrhea is a common symptom. Too much methane production typically causes the constipation, but you don't want to worry about the ins and outs. Whether your symptoms are, we're going to kind of treat it all the same anyway. Abdominal pain is really common, but that kind of goes with the bloating and things. Food intolerances. Now, this is specific. So you may have food intolerances, food sensitivity, food allergies, whatever version of food reactions you have. If you have food reactions, a lot of times it's because you already have SIBO, SIFO. Those are setting up an environment of inflammation, and then you eat an inflammatory food, and then you have abdominal pain or food issues. But the root cause may go all the way back to SIBO, SIFO. Okay? Next is, of course, malabsorption and vitamin deficiencies. If you have SIBO, SIFO, then you're not getting first access to your nutrients. The bacteria and fungus are, so that leads to nutrient deficiencies. And then number two, when you have SIBO, SIFO, you have so much inflammation in your gut that you start losing surface area, you start losing the ability to absorb nutrients. And if you're not familiar with that, go back to my previous video where I talked about leaky gut and your shag carpet. The more inflammation you have, the more bacterial fungal overgrowth that you have, the more inflammation, the more damage, and the less shag carpet, the less absorption. So you end up with vitamin deficiencies. Then those vitamin deficiencies can cause fatigue and brain fog and rashes and all kinds of stuff, right? Of course, leaky gut is associated with SIBO and SIFO. That's typically what we say the number one cause is. And then IBS. So if you've ever had a diagnosis of IBS, me too, then most likely you've been struggling with SIBO and SIFO and didn't know it. In the conventional medical world, they don't really understand SIBO and SIFO. They don't really know how to test for it or treat it. So a lot of times you end up with this IBS diagnosis and they end up trying to treat the symptoms instead of going after the root cause. Okay? Next what are the causes of SIBO and SIFO? Some of these are self-explanatory and make sense, but number one on the list is antibiotics. We, over the past 30, 40 years, have grown up using antibiotics for anything and everything, from colds to flus, to sinus infections, to urinary tract infections, to any kind of bowel pain, commonly using antibiotics way too much. And it wasn't at anyone's fault. All doctors and things are always trying to do the best for their patient. They're not intentionally doing harm. But unfortunately, one of the things we've learned from too much antibiotic use is, of course, that the more antibiotics you use, the more fungal overgrowth you have. So in general, we don't take a lot of antifungal medications. We always take a lot of antibiotic medications. And antibiotics primarily or only kill bacteria. They don't touch fungus. So every round of antibiotics you have, I look at it as a stair step. Every round of antibiotics you've had, the fungus have grown a little bit stronger, a little bit stronger, a little bit stronger. And then, of course, with all the carbohydrates, that's third on the list, carbohydrates and sugar, that leads to more yeast and fungus overgrowth because, as you probably know, candida and fungus thrive off of carbohydrates and sugar. They can live off of other things, but they really multiply when there's carbs and sugar. Number two is acid-blocking drugs. The most common drugs prescribed are Nexium and Prilosec, omeprazole, pantoprazole, all of those acid-blocking drugs, Tums, Rolaids, Zantac, and all of the acid-blocking drugs. The reason why it leads to SIBO and SIFO is because if your stomach doesn't have enough acid to break down the food, then undigested food ends up in the small intestine. As I say in other videos, that if you don't digest your food, something else will digest it for you, and you may not like that something else. So one of the first things we talk about with all of our patients is digestion is a north to south process. So you cannot fix the microbiome. Let's go back a second. You cannot fix the microbiome, which primarily lives in the large intestine. That's the last stage of digestion. So you cannot fix your microbiome if you're not digesting your food appropriately. Okay, I'm going to say that again. You cannot fix your microbiome if you are not digesting your food appropriately. So make sure you look at those videos and understand, is your digestion ideal? Because there's no reason to treat biofilms and SIBO and SIFO if you can't digest your food. So going back to our causes of SIBO and SIFO. So acid-blocking drugs. If you've been on acid-blocking drugs, you need to watch the videos regarding heartburn, reflux, and how to restore your stomach lining, how to restore acid production so you can appropriately digest the food so that you can repair the downstream effects. Next is refined flour. So processed foods, anything that is refined or processed is going to lead to more SIBO and SIFO. Your bowels were not designed to tolerate Twinkies and Little Debbies. Those are obvious. But even further, commonly we'll have patients that are eating a very healthy diet. They're on paleo, but really what they're doing is they're eating paleo junk food. They're eating paleo crackers and paleo snacks and paleo bars and paleo this and that. No, your primary food should be things that your ancestors would identify before all of these processed foods existed, right? You're looking at meat and vegetables. Those are the simple things. That should be the majority of your diet, okay? Next is, oh, I said processed foods in addition to refined flours, yes. Damaged nerves. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on these two, but damaged nerves. So if you have an autoimmune inflammatory condition towards your nerves, then your stomach, your intestines may not work very well. And if that happens, then you may not make enough stomach acid, you may not make enough enzymes, and that would be a reason to not have good digestion, and SIBO and SIFO could overgrow. Also, if you're not moving stool along quick enough, that's a reason for overgrowth to accumulate. Damaged nerves wouldn't let you keep stool moving. The last one is scar tissue from surgery. So any kind of abdominal surgery, whether that's a gallbladder, an appendix, a hernia, whatever it may be, any abdominal surgery, C-section, causes scar tissue around the abdomen and inside the intestines, or around the intestine, not necessarily inside. And so any scar tissue slows down motility, changes how your intestines work, and can lead to more overgrowth. Doesn't mean it's not fixable, it's not reversible, just means it might take a little more work to get there. So how do you test for SIBO and SIFO? Although I have answers up here, I'm going to tell you that it is really difficult to test for SIBO and SIFO. It is almost impossible to determine if the overgrowth is in the small intestine versus in the large intestine. Okay? Our favorite way to test for SIBO, SIFO is through a stool study. But you have to remember where the stool study comes from. It comes from the anus, and the anus is most closely attached to the large intestine. So I can tell you if you have an overgrowth of bacteria, an overgrowth of fungus from your stool study, like this person, KOH prep was high. I don't think they had bacteria, or they did have some dysfunction, but we'll go over the stool study on another day. But so if you have an overgrowth on your stool study, it doesn't necessarily mean you have SIBO. Commonly in my practice, I will throw out the SIBO, SIFO terms because it's easier to say and it's easier for people to understand. There's a term for people to look up, but truly identifying whether it's in the small intestine or not is difficult, but ultimately doesn't really matter. Okay? So we like doing stool studies for this because it also gives you digestion, how well you break down your foods, inflammation, infection, all kinds of stuff in a stool study. Our second favorite version is an organic acids test. An organic acids test is a urine sample that you send to a lab. It's usually frozen. And what they're looking for is they're looking for metabolites of organisms like yeast and bacteria. And if those metabolites are higher than they should be, then that suggests that there's high metabolic activity, and it suggests that there's an overgrowth. Once again, it doesn't tell you whether it's in the small bowels, the large intestines, or even your sinuses or your lungs or somewhere else. It doesn't really tell you. So there's limitations to each one. The only test that is truly diagnostic of SIBO, not even SIFO, it doesn't test for SIFO. The organic acids test is best for SIFO. The stool is best for SIBO. But the breath test is the best version to detect for SIBO. But in my experience, it's only truly positive about 30% of the time. That's what the studies show. It's only sensitive about 30% of the time, which means you might have SIBO and you would be missed 70% of the time. The good news about the breath test is that it's got a high specificity, which means if it's positive, you definitely have a problem, no questions asked. So if you've ever done a breath test and it was positive, you know you have pretty bad SIBO. But if it's negative, it doesn't mean you don't, it just means the test didn't pick it up. So I'm not a big fan of the breath test. They're expensive. They don't really tell us a whole lot. And in general, I'm going to treat you as if you do have SIBO and SIFO anyway, until proven otherwise, because most people have eaten poorly and done antibiotics at least at some point in their lifetime. And once the SIBO, SIFO gets set up, it's really hard to eradicate. So just changing your diet isn't enough to eradicate the SIBO and SIFO. Okay? So then we get to the next question is, how do you treat SIBO and SIFO? Now, I won't go into the specifics here because it's in our biofilm treatment plan, and we're going to go into grave detail about how it's treated in the biofilm treatment plan. But mostly I want to say that it's done by fixing your nutrition and digestion, of course. If you can't digest the food, something else will. So fixing your nutrition and digestion, which usually involves supplements. So supplements to improve digestion, whether that be betaine hydrochloric acid to improve the stomach, or pancreatic enzymes, or oxbio because you had a gallbladder removal. And then there's supplements specifically guided that will treat biofilms and the SIBO and SIFO. And then many times we have to use prescriptions because these organisms don't want to go anywhere. They're quite happy where they are. And once they've built a fortress, we have to knock down that fortress, just like you see in medieval times. We've got to take a battering ram to their front door, and it takes time. Okay? So treating SIBO and SIFO we'll uncover in some of the future videos. Hope this was helpful.